now. That's right. The Hangout on air is live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Source Material. I am your host, Jesse Starcher, and tonight we are going to be discussing a book that we've actually covered on this podcast before. It was very early, way back in the early days of Source Material when I was just getting my gumption up to do a podcast. And by the third episode, I got really brave and went live on Blog Talk Radio. And we covered the Marvel epic 6-issue series from 1991 called Infinity Gauntlet. Now, we're going to be doing this book in preparation for an upcoming film, I believe. And joining me here to help me along the way is one patriarch of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. His name is Mark Radulich. Mark Radulich, introduce yourself and tell us why we're doing this book tonight.
Well, as Jesse said, I am Mark Radulich, your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, and I am the patriarch of the Radulich and Broadcasting Podcast Network. And as with all things, we synergize with the latest and greatest in the cinema. And of course, when this airs, when this goes live on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, will be the very, 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 very first day people can see Avengers Infinity War, the third Avengers movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So with that, we decided to go back and revisit the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, as some of it is the inspiration for this movie. The other inspiration was Infinity, but I'm not paying $50 for a graphic novel and reading that goddamn thing. Forget it. So we're going to do the Infinity Gauntlet instead.
All right. I'm all right with that. This is, I think, one of the, man, it's got to be one of the first major crossovers that I collected as a child, straight off of the newsstands. Young 13-year-old Jesse Starcher was pulling this off of there and reading it as it was being released. And I collected every issue, I think, up to issue 5. And I did not get issue 6 for some reason. I have no idea why.
No dedication.
Guess why, but
what's that?
I was going to guess why you didn't get it, but
well, I don't know. This is newsstand. This is back before we had a comic book store in our area. So
yeah, it has nothing to do with that.
Okay. That voice you hear is the pugilistic pundit himself. He has joined us here on Source Material a few times, and I think you may recognize his voice. His name is Pat Mullen. Pat Mullen, welcome to the Source Material podcast. Are you ready to talk some Infinity Gauntlet tonight?
I was actually preparing for Armageddon 2001. So,
oh my gosh, it's on the list. I swear to goodness, it's on the list. I want to do that so bad, so bad.
At the same time, this was out. Armageddon 2001 was being published, and I had to pick between them, and I picked Armageddon 2001.
I have, I think, just about every single one of those annuals, and of course the first issue and the second issue. And I've read up a little bit on that, and I haven't even done a show on it. That's going to be an interesting story. And I swear to, it is there. It's just we haven't had the chance to, haven't had a break to where the synergization. That's not a word, but I'm going to call it that. The synergization happens all day long. So well, at some point, Armageddon 2001 will be discussed on here. But tonight,
swerve, bro.
Swerve. We're talking Infinity Gauntlet. So we may have a special guest here join us here later. He's in the process of thinking about coming onto the show. So I'll save that extra special guest for if he shows or not. I certainly don't want to give away the surprise. But until then, what we're going to do here real quick, I'm going to intro you to the book, do a little synopsis, and then we're going to go down through some talking points, talk about our favorite parts of this book, what we liked, what we didn't like, things of that nature. Just the old standard Source Material fare. So this, I think it's time. We'll get the synopsis started. I mean, Mark, I'll ask you here first. You got anything you want to say about this series before I get into our creative team and our synopsis?
I think, just started collecting back in the early 90s when I believe this came out. So I picked this up on the newsstands as well, and I remember loving it when I was a kid. We talked a little bit about it on the last source material, and I remembered a little bit about it, but I had actually forgotten how the very end of it goes. I reread it all last night in preparation for the show. I read the whole thing. And it's an interesting story. I'm anxious to get into talking about it, and it's a very multi-layered story. We have covered some real doozies on source materials we've talked about before, between the wacky Racelands and the Iron Fist and everything. We have covered a lot of very simple stories where it was like, yeah, so that was a thing, and all right, plugs. This one actually is not so simple, and but is not like Baby Darkseid complex either. This was a well-told story, but it works on a lot of different levels. This might rise to the level of literature. I'm not afraid to say that out loud in a public forum. I honestly think there's a lot to talk about, not just in the plot, but at the various levels at which the story works. So why don't you tell us all about it, and I'll tell you what the hell I'm talking about.
All right. Real quick, though, Pat, you said you weren't collecting it at the time it was getting released. When did you first read Infinity Gauntlet? Do you remember?
Probably like 95, I want to say, when they came out with the trade for the first time.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead. We'll get into the creative team here. Our creative team is some very, very prominent Marvel creators here. We have a writer by the name of Jim Starlin. Now, that the quick notes I have here, he was involved in the revival of the Silver Surfer, co-creating Marvel characters such as Thanos, Drax the Destroyer, Gamora, and Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. Our artists on the books, there's two artists. There's George Perez and there's Ron Lim. And both of those guys actually, well, George Perez, I believe he was part of Crisis. Can anybody confirm that for me?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Crisis on Infinite Earths, one of the, I think, the crossover, or excuse me, the event that started back in '85 for DC. And unfortunately, we've had a flood of those since then. But I mean, Crisis on Infinite Earths. So George Perez had his hand in there, and Ron Lim, which quickly became one of my favorite artists from the '90s. He's done all sorts of books. What we're going to be talking about here, Infinity Gauntlet. He's done a lot of Silver Surfer. So I've always enjoyed his art. So both of those guys tag teaming this series was a sight to see, in my opinion. So let's go ahead. We'll get into this. So this came out July through December of 1991. And the story takes place after the events of Thanos Quest. Now, I'm pretty certain, I haven't read it, I started it, but pretty certain Thanos is going in Thanos Quest, he's going after the gems, the Infinity Stones at that point in time. And in order to try and put all of them together, possess all of them, and become almost an omnipotent being here. So Thanos, at the beginning of Infinity Gauntlet, he does now possess all 6 Infinity Stones and has put them into a gauntlet. And since acquiring the power of a god, Thanos is not exactly sure what the next move is going to be. Whatever it is, nothing will stop him from trying to achieve his goal, which is making death love
picking
him.
Up a girl.
You got to make the chick love you. So with Mephisto in his ear, Thanos attempts to win his love's affection by doing a few things to show his devotion: creating a shrine, bringing his granddaughter Nebula to a place between life and death as a mangled corpse, warping his brother Eros as a means of torture. But it isn't until he is reminded that he owes death his literal life. She resurrected him, by the way. And what the price for that was, Thanos was to wipe out half of the universe's population. And with a snap of his fingers, Thanos makes good on his promise. Shortly before this, on Earth, A beaten Silver Surfer seeks Doctor Strange's aid in order to try and stop Thanos. After the effects of Thanos' gambit to make death love him, many of our heroes are reeling from the disappearance of half the population on the planet. Adam Warlock enters the picture with a plan to try and stop Thanos, convincing our Marvel heroes and even Doctor Doom I can't remember. Does Doctor Doom like say, okay, yeah, I'm in? Or is he like, nah, you guys go ahead and go on about your business? I can't remember. Mark, do you remember off the top of your head?
I feel like he wants to lead the brigade. And they're like, yeah, no.
Okay. All right. So Adam Warlock convinces them to band together with what forces they have left to make an attack. Now, even in deep space, Galactus, the planet devourer, can easily see the effects Thanos has had and believes he may need to seek some type of action or take some type of action as well and seek some assistance. Even beings such as Love, Hate, the Stranger, Kronos, and others are making a plan to try and rid the universe of Thanos and his Infinity Gauntlet. After all of Thanos' effort, Death will still not even speak to him. And he is left... That's cold. I'm telling you. He is left wanting to understand what can make her love him. Until finally our heroes show...
Why won't you love me? I'm doing it all for you. Ugh, you're such a whiner, Thanos.
Thanos, come on, man. Until finally our heroes show to face Thanos head on, and Thanos, with the help of Mephisto, realizes that maybe a somewhat fair fight would make Death realize how courageous he is and perhaps win her over. So he dampens the power of the gauntlet and begins the battle. Even with their combined might, our heroes fall, and they fall in some gruesome ways in front of our eyes. In a desperate gamble, Silver Surfer attempts to grab the gauntlet from Thanos, but fails, and now it seems all is lost. And then the cosmic beings appear, and the comic can't even handle the insanity that is going on in that battle. I mean, it's just colors. You're tripping on acid. It's insane.
Marvel really was one big acid trip once upon a time, wasn't it?
I swear, man.
Yes, it was.
Mephisto even gets on the action, trying to snag the gauntlet from Thanos, but again, Thanos is too smart. After defeating everyone, including the all-powerful Eternity, Thanos takes Eternity's place among the stars, leaving his physical body behind. Nebula grabs the gauntlet from Thanos' hand, and then puts it on her own, banishing Thanos to outer space and reversing almost everything he has done. It is now that Warlock and Thanos must come together to defeat Nebula, to which they are able to do so. And before Thanos can make another play for an empty Infinity Gauntlet, Warlock quickly takes possession of the glove, ending the battle. At the end of the story, Thanos, who is now a simple farmer, is visited by Warlock to possibly pay for his sins. Warlock allows him to live as Thanos reflects on his quest for power and how he does not envy Warlock and the great responsibility that he now has with the Gauntlet and the Infinity Stones. So there we go. That is a very, very nutshell of a synopsis. So Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you first with my first question. All right. What do you think about old Thanos here and the Infinity Gauntlet and what's occurred in his character?
I thought it was, as far as villains plots go, I thought this one was interesting because without sort of peeling back the surface, let's just talk about on the surface, what is our villain's goal? The villain's goal was to woo the target of his desire. He wanted to make Death love him. And he knew that the only way to make Death love him was to complete a grand gesture of death. Give her what she wants.
All that she wants is another baby.
Is gone tomorrow, but all that you did this to yourself.
Continue.
So, I mean, when you think about, I know I'm sort of known for saying things like, "What doesn't anyone rob a bank anymore?" But in 1991, before we got into baby dark sides and universes collapsing and the rise of syphilis,
that's coming. You better watch out.
I thought this was an interesting thing to do with a character. You know, he wasn't there to conquer Earth. He's not even trying to conquer the universe. He wants this entity to return his affection. And so, you know, whether it was kill half the beings in the universe or bake a cake, either he would have done either to get this woman's affection, whatever needed to be done. And that's it. And by the same token, what I liked about this is I said the same thing about Monsters Unleashed. That at the end of the day, you have all of these godlike beings, and nobody could beat him. He had to beat himself. He basically had to leave he had to leave himself open, which I loved because I can't remember where else I've seen this. I keep thinking Aladdin, but Aladdin was slightly different. But essentially, like, he trades places with, I believe it's Eternity, which left his body unguarded, and Nebula could just take the gauntlet off of him.
Yep.
You're like, oh shit! I thought about everything but that. You know, and Adam Warlock's point to him that you're always going to leave a way to be beaten because deep down inside you know you don't deserve to win. Like, huh? That's pretty profound for a 10-cent comic book. And I think, some might say, well, that's a little insulting given the gravity of where comic books have gone throughout the years. It's some of it has risen to the level of pretty great literature. But you got to remember, like I said, a lot of the early comics, they were just they were entertainment for kids. And I mean, so when you think about the audience in 1991 for who might have been reading these, yeah, sure, adults read them too. But that's pretty profound for the audience I think they were trying to reach. And so I think one of the reasons why it's lasted, when you think about all the crossovers, you think about Secret Wars, you think about some of the X-Men ones. I mean, really, the Infinity Gauntlet has stood the test of time, and it's because I think it resonates with people for all the reasons I just mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to kind of slip in here. One of the things that I noticed is that Thanos is a guy. He's a nihilist. He loves death. He is somebody that loves death in a literal sense, and it's interesting that they take that and put it in a physical sense as well in this book. And he can't ever get death to love him back. So we'll talk about death here in just a few.
If you think about like Thanos Rising, which we covered on source material,
yeah.
kind of, sort of. I think he loves death because in his mind, death is the only one that gets him. He feels like Thanos feels like there's nothing good about him. That he is a harbinger of death and doom and destruction, and nobody else can.
He's just a crazy nihilist.
I missed the first part of that.
I mean, it's not just that there's nothing good about him. There's just nothing good, period. He is a crazy textbook nihilist.
What to finish what I was saying, and I think, but the only one that he feels like the only one that really gets him gets it. If we're gonna say, if we're just gonna focus on the nihilism part, is death. Because who else would understand and appreciate that point of view but death?
Mm-hmm. Pat Mullen, tell me about your thoughts on Thanos in this book.
So what they do is they use Thanos as kind of symbolism for what a not just a man, but a person as a whole is all about. They want to achieve something much greater than themselves. And they want to do it on this grand scale. But they have a really petty or silly reason for doing it. It's one of those really, really easy to see things, but it's done in such a way that it doesn't insult your intelligence by bringing it to the level they do it. They put things on a grand cosmic scale, yes, but they have it where anybody can really understand what it's coming from. How many times have you wanted to do something awesome just so you could be the person to stick it up somebody else's ass that you did it and they didn't?
Yesterday? Earlier today?
Yeah, I can think of at least 14 times today.
Yeah, exactly.
And in reality, achieving this is something you should want for the sake of the achievement, for what greatness it can bring, or good it can do, etc. No, you don't want it for that. You want to do it for this really stupid, petty reason, and that's what this whole series is.
It's a good point. I mean, all he's trying to do is just win over a girl. That's almost everything. And Mark,
I think now's a good time for me to read what I wrote to you guys offline. Hang on, let me bring it up real quick.
Good time for that.
Shut up, you. you nihilist, you. Yeah. So here's our story in a nutshell. Boy likes girl. Girl ignores boy. Boy does crazy shit to get girl's attention. Girl goes with boy's worst enemy. Ta-da! The Infinity Gauntlet.
Well, you can't help but feel sorry for Thanos in that. With that, I mean, really, he's insane. We talked about his sanity in Thanos Rising. We talked about, you could see that he's just doing ignorant stuff to try and get her attention, and it's not working. He's not able to do anything. So all you want throughout like 3 or 4 of these books is just him to get the satisfaction of like half a smile from this girl. So that kind of leads in to the next question. And we've already touched on her already, but I mean, Mark, what else do you have to say about the personification of death, Marvel Universe's death here?
She's every girl I've ever met.
Why do they do this to us? Why?
First they give you the sense that you might have a shot with them, that everything you do is not enough. Then they date somebody else, and they just leave you with your dick in your hand, hanging out to dry.
It's like the last American version.
Okay. This is that to the nth level, where, I mean, death brought Thanos back from the dead. The guy was dead, and she gave him a mission and said, okay, you are to do this, and I want you to wipe out half the population of the universe.
This is the ultimate friend zone.
Oh,
when you think about it, like, think about it, like, so here you have this lonely guy, or a dead guy, however you like it, right? And then along comes this girl who gives him back life, gives him purpose, gives him a reason to being. And he's like, yes, hot damn, you are everything to me. Why can't we be together? And she's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I like you as just a friend. Take it easy. And then he gets all weird about it, and he starts killing people, and doing these grand speeches. And then my favorite part of this whole book is that he gets so fed up with this, being friend zoned by death, that he just creates his own girlfriend. Yeah.
Well, why not? I mean, if you've got the power, do it. It's
you know what this is. This is legitimately a ripoff entirely of the plot of The Last American Virgin.
Okay, I want to just go ahead and step up and say I've never seen the movie. So, Pat, please explain.
In a nutshell, it is a remake of the Israeli film Lemon Popsicle, made by Golan and Globus, who you guys know.
I know that. I vaguely remember this.
Yeah, who founded Canon Films. Basically, the plot involves Lawrence Monahan as Gary, who is the titular version of this movie, where there is a transfer student who comes to their school named Karen, who he falls head over heels in love with, and instead his ladies' man friend Rick is the one to deflower Karen and gets her pregnant and leaves her. So Gary makes this grand gesture of selling almost everything he owns and borrowing money from his boss to pay for the abortion. And so what happens is, after the abortion, she's sick. He stays there, nurses her back to health, and he tells her, I love you, and she seems like she reciprocates it. And so she's having a birthday party the following week, and she invites him. So he puts together a few more dollars and buys her a gold locket for her birthday. And when he gets to the party, he sees her making out with Rick.
Ouch.
So you know what this also reminds me of? Forrest Gump.
Swerve, bro. She dies of AIDS.
After she has sex with fucking Forrest. But isn't it the story of Forrest Gump where like he did everything to try to be with this chick and she did everything to be with every other guy, except Forrest? And then, when she was fucking, she has fucking AIDS and she's down in her luck and has nowhere else to go and nearly kills herself. That's when she's willing to give Forrest a romp in bed. And even then she runs away from him. She doesn't come back until she finds out. I'm screwing up part of the story, but she doesn't even come back to the guy until, she has AIDS and it literally has nowhere else to go.
Yeah. It saddens me to see, Thanos, who is just...
It saddens you that we've now compared Thanos to the last American Virgin and Forrest Gump.
Well, the problem is that they're extremely apt. They are great comparisons. Because Infinity War, everybody, go see it. This guy, I mean, we want to hate him as a villain because he does so many things to destroy all this, all this lineage and all this history that we've grown up with as these heroes in the Marvel universe, and he destroys them in one fell swoop, and sometimes in these horrific ways. But
God, you know what? I really hate Thanos.
He's a jerk. But
welcome
then you're
to
like,
welcome to Source Material, where we tear down everything cool.
Has nothing to do with he's a jerk. Like, he's really just not a good character at this point.
Oh, now come on. It's Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, we just made the complete transformation that this is an allegory to either a lowly virgin or a country bumpkin retard.
I love this podcast.
The point of it is that Thanos is every man. That's where we're going with. Whether you are a lowly retard or an omnipotent being.
Hey, comic book fans. Hey, comic book fans, do you have a sacred cow? Watch the Source Material podcast. Fuck it, right in front of you.
Like, I'm just saying, like, initially my thought was, okay, this whole thing is a love letter from Jim Starlin to Thanos. Because Jim Starlin is literally like Jim Starlin created Thanos, and he created Thanos as a ripoff of Darkseid. We all know that, so that's strike one against Thanos as a whole, but we won't go there. And he was the only guy who was writing Thanos stories for years, and he didn't like what other writers did with Thanos at certain points. And certain people,
Thanos copter.
Yeah. At certain,
I'm surprised that made it. The Thanos Copter got mentioned tonight. Unbelievable.
And he got to a certain point where he basically was outright refusing to allow people to write Thanos. And they got to this stage where they needed a crossover, and he had pitched the idea, and they were like, yeah, okay, go with it. Who's Thanos? Because they had forgotten about the character, and he was like, I'm going to bring him back bigger and better than ever, and so they do this crossover, and then years later, they were like, oh, he's something. We got to use him more. So other writers wrote Thanos, and he was getting beaten by Kazar and really not being treated as a Darkseid level threat in the Marvel U. And so Jim Starlin came back literally to just make sure everybody understood that those versions of Thanos were all clones. It wasn't the real guy.
Oh, you're kidding.
Swerve, bro.
Swerve, bro.
Swerve, bro.
Clones. Wonderful. Well,
yeah,
put a pin in that one there, and let everybody know Thanos sucks. We'll probably revisit that again here when we talk about the movies. But anyway, anything left unsaid about the personification of death there, Mark or Pat? Yeah, whichever one wants to go first.
I just thought it was a little.
How about whichever one wants to go at the same time the other one does?
Go ahead, Mark.
You would think that the living embodiment of death, when she decided to turn on Thanos, could have just done it. Like, you're dead. Ta-da! you know?
Yeah.
That's it. Like, she basically, like, I gotta pull the book out again, but I feel like she just, like, shoots him with laser beams. And like, you would think that the all-powerful entity of death would actually be an all-powerful entity of death. To me, the way that Starlin writes her, The best parts of her are when she's giving Thanos the cold shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
That stuff is fun.
Oh, yeah.
When she's actively fighting Thanos, this is where I start to kind of throw my hands up with a lot of the Marvel Cosmic Universe, because it sounds like children playing with toys. Like, well, this guy devours planets. Okay, this guy can devour universes. Okay, well, my guy can devour universes too, but has a force field. I can penetrate your force field. This just goes on forever. You know, like a lot of the pantheon of, like I said, you know, Marvel at one point was like a giant acid trip, a very colorful acid trip. And if you don't think too hard about it, it's kind of fun to read. You know, the old Thor comics, especially, you know, dealt with a lot of the Marvel Cosmic, and a lot of it was really fun and colorful. But you can't think too hard about it, or all of it just stops making sense. And so when I was looking at like the pantheon of cosmic characters, the only thing that started to make sense to me was, you know, in fighting Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet and essentially fighting God, they started to rip the fabric of the universe apart. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody, I get what I'm trying to say is, in a very awkward way, is that everyone is way too overpowered. So I like the fact that the solution of the whole thing was that Thanos will essentially leave a back door open for to beat himself. But getting there, it's just a lot of overpowered beings and writers like trying to figure out, what do you do with a being that can do anything? And then the worst part about it is they make probably what should have been the strongest, most powerful character, Death, and they don't do anything with it. She just shoots laser beams.
I understand where you're coming from there. Even as a kid, when I was reading this, I struggled to wrap my mind around the fact that, okay, this is Death, and you know, she seems very limited throughout the book. Like, she's just standing around letting Thanos do whatever he wants. And you know, but what's funny,
if I may,
she is the strongest character in the book, in the fact that she is using her, her womanly ways to manipulate Thanos.
If I may, she's like the guy, you know, who brings his girlfriend to the D&D game, and she's like, I don't want to play, I'll just stand here and watch. And how awkward that is, and makes her, you know, Pat knows what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about. So this is my second favorite interpretation of Death as a Being from the year 1991, behind only Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Wonderful. Best 2 out of 3.
Also, I was told today, speaking of dungeons, by a girl I work with, that she goes, I don't care what your day thinks, what you think about your day and how embarrassing certain things are. I have to tell you in a sentence that I am a +1 to the wedding of my dungeon master.
Wow. Nerd.
True story, bro.
All right. So let's go ahead and move on here. Let me flip over to my notes. All right, so we've talked about Thanos. We've talked about Death. I put this question on here specifically because I knew that Pat would be joining us tonight. Pat, I listened to my original podcast back in 2014, and of course, you know, Golden Age Dave had to leave me rather quickly, and he was the Thor guy. He was the guy I knew back in my day that read Thor and knew a lot about him. So this version of Thor that we get in this book is a guy by the name of Eric Masterson.
Yeah.
Can you please just give me a little bit of knowledge here and explain to me Eric Masterson, what the hell he's doing in this book and what's going on?
Okay, so to make a really long, convoluted story short, Thor's essence had been banished because he was believed to have killed Loki, and killing an Aesir is an offense that is punishable by death. However, as Thor had bonded with a mortal named Eric Masterson, who was going to die if Thor didn't bond with him the same way he bonded with Donald Blake, because he had tried to sacrifice his life to save Thor. So Thor was sharing Eric Masterson's body as a host body the way he did Blake. When Thor's essence was banished, it had Masterson take over the ability to transform into Thor, but retained all of Masterson's thoughts and such, and basically put him in a lesser version of Thor, where his strength was at the class 75 level. He didn't really have the wherewithal or knowledge to use all of the powers at his disposal the way Thor would, if that makes sense. And so he's trying to not let people know that he is not the Thor by speaking in those like Shakespearean moments, but he slips a lot and somehow nobody notices.
Well, I noticed they played that up throughout the book. Like, I can't let him know I'm not the original Thor. I'm going to turn back into Eric Masterson. And I don't know why even give him a part. Did he have much of an impact on what happened? I know that Thor's hammer, I think, has like sends Thanos out into space or something like that. I know Thor's hammer has a bit of a part in this book, but I mean, like, why even keep him around? Why not make him just like disappear? You know,
the whole thing with that is it's one of those things where to give this some gravity. It's one thing for readers to see Thanos beat like this cosmic pantheon that included the Stranger and Galactus and stuff. It's another to see him easily dispatch the characters who everybody's familiar with on a much more consistent level.
Okay.
And if you're talking about Marvel's heavy hitters, Thor's at the top of that list. Even a lesser Thor, people still see the idea of it's Thor being smacked around.
I see. That makes sense. All right. Well, next up, let's talk about your favorite fights. We'll start with Mark here. I mean, there were a lot of. I mean, this whole book was getting prepared for a fight and then a fight and then more fights. So,
another fight.
did you have a favorite one? Was there? I mean,
I like the scramble at the end. I like the loose ball scramble at the end. You know,
where Drax grabs the Hulk for no reason.
Yeah, I'm on your team. You giddy. But no, they at this point, Thanos has lost the gauntlet. Nebula has it. Nebula can't handle it. She loses the gauntlet. We have a loose ball. We have a loose ball scrum, and everyone dives for it. And then Adam Warlock gets it, and and he becomes the the keeper of the Infinity Gauntlet, at least for a time. I like that at the end. I dug that.
Yeah, I've got it.
That panel right there. I need that hung up on my wall.
They're all after it.
Especially the bottom. You idiot. I'm on your side.
Got him in a headlock.
That to me is every football game I've ever played.
Nice. Man, Thor like laying it down on.
Yeah, fucking. He knocked Thanos' dick in the dirt.
Nice. All right.
Now, huh?
Pat Mullen, you got a favorite skirmish?
Yeah. There's a point early on during the initial assault on Thanos where Thor's able to surprise him and knock him back down pretty good with a shot from the hammer. And Doctor Doom being Doctor Doom, when Thor's about to initiate what he believes could be a big kill shot level blast, immediately jumps in the way to try to take the gauntlet away.
Now, right here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's...
If there's ever one particular moment in any comic that will just embody who Doom is, that's it.
Mark, you weren't around for the original Secret Wars, right? That was me and Ronnie, I think, tackling that one. I can't remember if you were part of that or not.
I was not on that podcast, but that's another one that I read when it was out.
Yeah, that is, I think, one of the premier Doom stories, in my opinion, that I've read. I haven't read a whole lot of Doom, but I loved reading him and his quest, his thirst for power and the Beyonder. I was watching a video tonight, and the guy was comparing. You guys tell me if you agree with this or you don't care or whatever. But the guy said that the Beyonder was actually more powerful than the Infinity Gauntlet. Pat, what do you think of that?
I don't know about that one.
Let's break this down, Pat. I'm gonna put it to you, and then you tell me if I'm off base. The Infinity Gauntlet is as powerful as its user. So, for example, Thanos had a mind and was to use the thing to almost its full potential, and it was able to handle all the stimuli, whereas Nebula wasn't. And Adam Warlock possessed the Infinity Gauntlet and never really used it to do anything of consequence, but he was able to handle the stimuli. Whereas the Beyonder is a sentient being that can do anything. There's no level with the Beyonder. He just is.
But doesn't Doom like siphon some of Beyonder's power in Secret Wars? Is that how that goes down?
He siphons it, but ultimately you realize that he let him siphon it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Beyonder let that kind of happen. It's one of those things where like it's really an exponential type of argument that Mark is bringing up the correct point with. The Gauntlet is only as powerful as the potential of its user, whereas the Beyonder had the ability to create Battle World and transport people there at a whim. So it's all like what happens if you put the Infinity Gauntlet on somebody like Korvac? It's all in perspective.
Okay. All right. That is how you get a +1 to a DM's wedding there. When you
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm finished with my stupid joke. Go ahead, Mark.
So I want to complain about the story for a moment. Here's my one complaint. Or can we do that now, or do you want me to wait?
Go for it.
So I don't know if either one of you have ever read Emperor Joker. I read it earlier this year. Oh no, Pat hates it. What a surprise! But
I think the end is unsatisfying. I don't hate the story itself.
I wanted whether you liked or hated it. I don't care about the ending as such. I want to talk about. I want to compare the idea of one madman with the ability with omnipotence. Not impotence. That's a whole other thing.
No wonder he's mad.
I want to talk about one crazy person with omnipotence versus another crazy person with omnipotence, and how the stories are portrayed. So, all Thanos does what all Thanos does in the Infinity Gauntlet is he makes half the beings of the universe disappear. He builds a throne for death. And he fights a bunch of superheroes, and that's kind of it. When you think about the inside the mind of a madman, what you could do with unparalleled power to create or destroy at a whim, this is kind of an unfulfilling story. That's my one complaint about it. They could have spent. Normally, I'm a big fan of editing. Like six issues, perfect. Maybe we could have done this in 4 issues. This one, I would have preferred almost 12 issues. I would have liked to have seen Thanos really explore the depths of his insanity in creating a world, in his image. Now, I understand that that's kind of out of his character, but think about the Joker now. Jesse, if you've never read Emperor Joker, essentially the Joker somehow gets the powers of Mxyzptlk.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that before. Yeah, that's crazy.
He rewrites the fabric of the universe, but he rewrites it to his whim. So he's strutting around like the cock of the walk, and Superman gets captured every night by Bizarro, and it's a world gone mad, and it's just one big joke. But it goes to the heart of what the Joker is. It was really colorful and really interesting, and it was kind of a DC take on Alice in Wonderland, which was the potential of this story to give you that Wonderland through the looking glass, and you get a lot of speeching, you get a lot of monologuing, and you get a couple of fights, and you get some existentialism, and in the end, the hot guy with the gold hair gets the gauntlet.
Well, I remember Dave talking about a humongous hardcover collection of this and all the crossovers that happened throughout this series, which I don't know if there was. I'm trying to think if there were like up at the top. I know there was definitely some for Infinity War, which occurred after this, but like up in the top right corner, it would say an Infinity something crossover. So I don't know if they explored any of that and other issues throughout the Marvel Universe during this time, which is a possibility. I can't say that I can recall any off the top of my head. And what you're getting here is the core story of him being who he is and the heroes coming to the rescue or trying to. Now, the other thing is that I don't know if I don't even know if it matters, but when you compare Thanos, and I've always thought about this, he's always called the Mad Titan. And again, I'm glad we covered Thanos Rising to give us an idea of his madness. But what I've always seen Thanos as is somebody, I've never thought of him as insane. He's never always come off to me as like, oh man, that guy's just batshit crazy. No, he's always calculating. He's all and coming from Thanos Rising, I think he realizes that he is a bit insane, but he is very, very reserved in that fact. And almost sometimes I wonder if he regrets it. And you don't see a whole lot of that here. You just see his obsession with trying to please this woman. And that's really about it. I mean, they could have taken and had a little bit more fun with it. I don't know. But Pat, do you have anything you'd like to say in regards to Mark there?
Well, you can't be totally sane if you're in love with the embodiment of death.
Agreed.
So I think we should point that out, that maybe, just maybe, the nom de guerre of the Mad Titan is not inaccurate in that sense.
I'll give you that.
Okay. However, Thanos sucks. Like, we really just warped my whole thought on the character tonight, and
oh man,
like, we really analyzed it. I realized he's just really trash.
Serving up hot cakes and hot takes. Matt Mullen, everybody.
Do you ever get feedback on Twitter or whatever? Like, hey man, you seem like a reasonable guy, but the people you bring on, why do they trash everything that's cool?
No, I do not. Anymore. I'm kind of glad. I asked for people to give us feedback, and I'm like, secretly, I'm like, just don't.
Yeah, that's kind of where
I really don't want to hear from you.
If I'm not invited back, I understand.
No. Always a place for you here, Pat Mullen. All right. So next up. All right. And I kind of want to throw in my 2 cents on my favorite fight. And I really think that it hit home for me. And I mentioned this a little bit in the previous episode from back in 2014, but it really hit home for me when the heroes went after Thanos and Thanos just started eliminating them one by one.
Yeah, I loved how he took care of those dirty, stinking muties too.
Wolverine, one of the hottest characters in the 90s, jumps up and like just buries his claws into Thanos' chest. And Thanos is like, rubber man. And there goes Wolverine, just laying on the ground, flip-flopping everywhere. That really hit home for me. And I can remember reading these issues as they came out one by one. And, dude, I didn't know what was going to happen in the Marvel Universe. I didn't understand that, yeah, hey, we're going to reverse everything in the last issue, which is quite common in these big events where there are high stakes and high death. But
can we talk about that? That's another problem with this story, is that at the end of the day, none of this mattered.
It didn't.
Well, we shouldn't say none of it, because it launched the series Infinity Watch.
Yep. And
kind of it was supposed to matter. It wound up not mattering because the Infinity Gems wound up in the Ultraverse. And that alone is worth a source material that would really have to be a hardcore fan listening only.
Well, I mean, if you think about, let's compare this to Secret Wars, right? Or House of M, or some of these other big time crossovers. Not Acts of Vengeance, that was trash. But these had lasting consequences. People came away from these events better or worse. The world had changed, that sort of thing. Especially with House of M. At the end of it, there were no more mutants.
Yeah, dirty, stinking muties.
But I mean, who's changed at the end? Maybe Doctor Strange, kind of, maybe, sort of. This is obviously the two stars of this book are Adam Warlock and Thanos, and they are obviously somewhat changed by the events of the Infinity Gauntlet. But when you think about the fact that the Warlock just snaps his fingers and everyone goes back to where they were, like this never happened. The only person who could truly appreciate that is Jesse, who loves time travel.
Indeed. I won't deny that.
But to the rest of us who like linear storytelling and stakes, I'm like, I got to the end of it. I'm like, this could, what this felt like? This felt like reading like Red Sun, or one of these elsewhere tales where you get to the end of it and you're like, well, that was a fun read. It ultimately didn't matter, but it was a fun distraction from my humdrum life for an hour.
Yeah, well, these guys weren't in the day, back in the day. I don't know if you've heard of the term right now. There's a term going around called writing for the trade. Now, maybe that's been around for a while, but when you're writing for the trade, I don't think this was written for the trade. This was written it became a trade paperback, obviously, but it was more written along the lines of, okay, you're going to be buying this series because you want to find out what happens next issue. That was their goal, trying to sell this stuff off of off of the newsstands as quick as they could in issue format. So somebody ingesting this in an hour, Mark, this went from July to September of 1991. Imagine having to put a month in between issues.
But what I'm saying is
2 weeks.
Shouldn't the characters who were a part of this thing, have some sort of memory of what happened, and shouldn't it have left them scarred, especially like.
Well, yeah, when Spider-Man gets beaten by a rock and dies. Yeah. Uh-huh.
How about the characters that all disappeared? The entire Fantastic Four disappeared. You would think that there'd be at least, a feeling of I don't know, some sort of like feeling of dread, something psychological, something traumatic, deep in their psyche about having died. Sure. and been brought back to life. That's what I mean by the story is ultimately inconsequential.
I hear you on that. I mean, because at the end, their end game was when they were writing this is like, okay, we're going to write a tremendous epic tale, but none of it's going to matter because at the end we've got to sell more Fantastic Four books. We can't write them off.
Well, I don't mind they got brought back to life, but they should have. Here's
with the Fantastic Four at the time in 1991, they had just undergone a major editorial overhaul. So during the writing of this book, their status isn't really overly clear. So that's why there's limited use of them in this. Whereas the X-Men characters, the X-Men were basically becoming their own kind of almost independent entity of everything else Marvel at the time. So they literally, the X-writers fought as far as who could be used, and the only two they gave permission to be used were Wolverine, that Marvel mandated had to be in it because of his popularity, and Cyclops, because he would represent not only the X-Men history as a whole, but the current X-Factor book that was out.
Oh, yeah.
But what I'm saying is, in continuity, the characters should have responded to this cataclysmic event.
Well, if there's one character who should have been in it out of that group, it should have been Reed.
Right.
Because you're talking about how do we do this, how do we combat this. You're talking about planning on a very cosmic, universal level. Reed is the guy who's had experience with Galactus, the Watcher, and is the smartest person in the Marvel Universe. I don't give a damn what they say about Moon Girl. Shove that shit up your ass, Marvel. Fucking 9-year-old girl smarter than reading.
Check out the Monsters Unleashed podcasts where Green Girl made her appearance here on the Source Material podcast. That's right.
Yeah, God, just shut up with that shit. Not the podcast. The podcast isn't shit. Moon Girl shit. But no, but that's, so the Fantastic Four thing, and we can go in depth on that someday about what the editorial switchover was at that point in time. Had a lot to do with John Byrne and his handling of the book. But that's why they weren't included. Nobody was really sure what their status was going to be going into this. Ultimately, it shouldn't have mattered anyway because none of this story winds up mattering.
Right.
So I understand Mark's point completely on that end, but you didn't know that at the time, and they didn't want you to know that at the time.
Yeah, like I said, later on they'll write stories that have, consequences for the characters that the characters feel and have to deal with going forward. And then they'll erase the universe and start all over again, and nothing will matter anyway. But I mean, at least for a period of time, they're dealing with the consequences of these cataclysmic events. So, this is a mixed bag. The Infinity Gauntlet is a mixed bag because independently, it's a fine story with enjoyable characters and really pretty artwork. On the other hand, it's trash.
I think what you're saying is a valid criticism. I really do. If you compare this to like Secret Wars, out of Secret Wars, there was quite a bit of consequences to the Marvel Universe. One of which being the alien symbiote came out of that. So there were lasting effects. But same thing here. Adam Warlock came back. We had the Infinity Watch, Infinity War, all that great stuff that happened after this. So it launched a few things. But
the thing stayed on Battleworld.
Yes,
the thing finally said, you know what? Fuck your couch. I don't want to go back.
Colossus did too for a little while.
Yeah, a lot of them were just like, you know what? We'll be fine here. You go back to your shitty planet where monsters are treated as such.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Let's get back to the list here. All right. Let's talk about the iconic Captain America moment that we got in this book, and which will probably be represented on screen as well. Mark, how do you feel, man, after seeing that? I'm going to try and pull up the panel here because I think it's in this issue.
I don't even remember what you're talking about. So
you don't remember what I'm talking about?
No. Please bring up the panel because I'll
bring up the panel. All right. So here we got Fire Lord fighting everybody. There's.
Don't you mean Firestorm?
That's exactly what I meant.
I can't believe you don't remember this. Everybody who read the book, this is the one that sticks out.
This is in the trailer of the. Yeah, right here. Okay. It's not over until the fat lady sings, Thanos. Surely you jest. So, yeah, here Captain America just walks straight up. Thanos just laid out everybody. I mean, everybody is almost, if they're not dead, they're dying, or they're going to be in some serious trouble. And Silver Surfer and Adam Warlock, I know they're watching this from like way far away. And he just walks up to Thanos as long as one man. Can you see this, Pat Mullen?
I can now, yes.
All right. I give you the honor, sir. Please take over Captain America here in that first panel and read his word balloon.
As long as one man stands against you, Thanos, you'll never be able to claim victory.
Oh, buddy. And then he takes a swing. Thanos takes advantage and shatters the adamantium shield. All right, excuse me. Vibranium shield. Boy, I always get those two mixed up.
Vibranium, adamantium alloy.
They're both the same. Yeah, they're both in that shield, Mark Radlich. Can you believe it? Thanos hits it, shatters it, raises his hand. That's when Silver Surfer goes for the gauntlet. Now, I think I think Captain America gets like a swift backhand. You think he dies right there? He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, his neck is broken.
That's Captain America's dead. Mark Radlich, tell me. I can't believe that you don't recall that.
Yeah, it didn't register. I was like, okay.
Wow. That's what you're going to see you're going to see something like that on screen during the movie because, like I said, it's in the trailer.
Yeah, and I was gonna say in the trailer, he comes down with his hand, and Captain America like catches it, and Thanos is kind of looking at him like, "I'm the Mad Titan, bro. What are you doing?
Swerve, bro. You're dead.
Swerve, Captain.
Swerve. It's a shoot, bro."
All right. So, I mean, Pat, did you feel anything when you first saw this happen? I mean, Captain America kind of, I don't want to say he went out like a bitch from a backhand, but I mean, that was still an iconic moment, him standing up.
Yeah, okay, we're on the habit and we're in the discussion of nothing in this book winds up mattering. This is one of those moments that makes you either really love Captain America or really hate Captain America. I really love Captain America, and I love this moment. It gets me hyped up that he knows he's facing someone he just can't beat. There's no shot at this, but the hell with it. I'm still going to go down swinging. That gets me hyped up. However, the people who hate Captain America, which I don't understand, I'll put that out there. I don't understand how you can hate Captain America. He is an amazing character. But I understand how if you hate him, you would hate this moment. Because it's just, oh, shut up. What are you going to do?
Yeah. I do remember this reading it originally. It was, it was a symbolic, one person's left, and it's Captain America, and he's the guy that's staring down this dude that easily, just like we see a couple pages later, can kill him with just a backhand. So easily outmatched, but a great moment nonetheless. All right. Okay. Yeah, well, let's talk about the art here. I mean, you guys, Mark, were you okay with the art? I know you're not the biggest art critique, but I mean, on a scale of wacky Raceland to, some
yes, the art's fine. The art is readable. Thanos looks a little comic booky at times, but I mean, like it's a comic book, so that's fine. He looks
like he's got a purple face. I don't understand what's going on here. This is like comic books or some shit.
Yeah, no, I mean it's the art is readable. Everything made sense. It's fine.
Pat Mullen.
Believe it or not, I've never been the biggest fan of George Perez's art. I actually liked when Lim took over because I was regularly reading the Captain America title at the time, which he was doing. And so I really enjoyed the art there. He was doing a storyline called Streets of Poison that I really enjoyed.
Oh, my God. I love that storyline. I talk about that on here incessantly. That's the one where Cap gets blown up in a meth lab.
Yes. And the meth lab interacts with the super soldier infused bloodstream. And, yeah, it's awesome. But that's a great storyline that he did the art for. So I actually preferred when he took over the book. And you can see he tries to not veer so far away from George Perez's initial artwork, and he doesn't. But I like the small tweaks he makes in terms of the musculature and some of the more exaggerated features that I think he does well.
Yeah. Ron Lim, his art to me sometimes is almost unmistakable. I don't consider myself, the greatest eye for art, but I mean, if you throw a Liefeld sketch in front of me, I'm going to say, yeah, I know who that is. I know who Todd McFarlane, what his art looks like. So some of the stuff is real, it's got its signature. And I think Ron Lim has a great signature style that stands out above a lot of the other stuff that I've seen. And it just looks polished. It made me a fan. I mean, I could tell you right now that once, I think it was Infinity War or Infinity Watch. I can't remember which one it was. But once that started up and Ron Lim was on there, I believe, I could tell. I don't know if he was just on there for one issue or if he continued, but I was like, oh, I recognize that artwork.
I had a great poster that came with a Spider-Man comic that he did. It was a poster of Cap, Spider-Man, and the Silver Surfer, which is an odd trio to have pictured in a poster, but they're all characters he enjoyed drawing, and I thought he did really well with, particularly the Silver Surfer.
Mm-hmm.
And the poster itself, that was a mainstay on my bedroom walls for years. until I started having girls over.
Then you gotta tear that shit down.
Yeah, you got to put that shit away. All right. Favorite part of the book? I mean, I don't know if we've totally covered that. Do you have a favorite part there, Pat Mullen?
Aside from the end, I guess if I'm picking like one moment in the book that I really like more than others, it's you know what? I
mean,
don't have one.
You don't have one. I mean, you already went with Doom. I know you mentioned Doom. I know you're a Doctor Doom fan, so his appearance, his grab for the gauntlet, I could understand that possibly being up there on the top of your list. But nothing else strikes your fancy.
There's like moments that start off really cool and then just die on me. Like Mephisto, finally making his move against Thanos, and it goes absolutely nowhere immediately.
Yeah.
Like, it's all, like, okay, I'll put it to you this way. So many times in that book is Dolph Ziggler coming back at the Royal Rumble this year as number 30. Like, it seems like it's going to be really awesome and something's going to happen, and he just gets tossed out with no fanfare, but I don't even remember who.
Sad.
It doesn't matter.
Sad is what it is. Mark Radlich, any other favorite parts for you, sir?
I liked when Thanos gave up his corporal body to become Eternity,
where he finally beats himself.
Yeah, it's like it was typical villain stuff. The good guys are always shit, and they can't do it. And if it wasn't for the fact, it's always like the opposite of the line from Spaceballs. The line from Spaceballs is, and this is why this is why evil will always win, because good is dumb. This is the opposite. Principle. Yeah, it's always the opposite. It's like, this is why the bad guys always lose, because the bad guys are dumb.
Pat, I wanted to throw something to you here because, again, like I said on my first recording, I had Golden Age Dave, who was a huge Thor fan. Did you feel that they were missing out not getting getting Odin and the rest of the Elder Gods or the Sky Fathers involved in this?
Another part of this that made no sense. You have this pantheon of Sky Fathers together, right? The God Squad, whatever you want to call them. Odin, Zeus, the Celtic gods, the American Indian gods, the Russian, Slavic gods, all this. They never even make an appearance after they all gather together and say they're going to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're stopped because the bridge is broke.
Yeah. This is that part in Age of Ultron where Thor goes to the pool to seek the Norns, and nobody understands what that scene means because so much context was cut out of it. And it's not like they were going to do anything anyway, because Eternity couldn't do anything. So, do you really think the Sky Fathers are going to be able to do something at that point? No. It was literally meaningless. It was there to try to add scope, I guess, to the magnitude of what was happening, and it added nothing.
Yeah. Colton, you need to get to bed, buddy.
Come on, Colton.
Colton, I'm trying to do my podcast.
If Lily's in bed, you should be in bed.
It's 10:30. Dude, you need to get to bed, okay? I'll be up there shortly. Just about done. Okay? Head on back up there. I'll be up there in a second.
Daddy,
I've
forgotten how to lay down, Daddy.
Get to bed, Colt. Come on. All right. So, yeah, if it wasn't for Thanos and the damn, hold on a second. I had this joke all lined up until he opened that door. If it wasn't for Thanos and the damn Asgardian failed infrastructure, they could have maybe made an impact.
Nice.
There we go. Took me a while. Get on up there. I'll be up there in a second. All right. We're just about. You're thirsty, Caleb?
Juice.
Get it. have your brother get you a drink. I don't think there's any Kool-Aid
raid
up
the
there.
liquor cabinet like normal kids. Jesus.
Yeah, then maybe they knock out.
Don't be saying deuce around this house, because you do that, and then the next thing you know, I'm going to go up there and find one in the toilet, unflushed yet again.
He didn't say deuce. He said juice.
Oh, he said juice.
Yeah.
I wondered how deuce figured into this. Deuce Domino? I have no idea.
I suggested your children should drink alcohol.
Alcohol? Yeah, that's wonderful. Wonderful ideas there, Mark Radulich. I'll let you institute those in your own home. All right, so let's go ahead. We'll do final thoughts on this book, and we'll just talk real briefly about what our expectations are on the upcoming movie. So, Mark Radulich, I mean, are you going to recommend this to somebody? Did you like it? Did you hate it? What's your thoughts?
I don't think I would recommend it to anyone who was going to go see the movie but had no interest in comics. I think, there are two kinds of Marvel Cinematic Universe fans. There's fans of the comics that are excited that there are now movies of their favorite comic book characters. And then there are people who have only seen the movies, have no interest in the comics, and really thought Thor Ragnarok was something special. Shut up.
Yeah, I'll punch every single damn one.
Get Pat started, will you? Just do me a favor.
Hey,
the podcast, get him fired up.
For more on Pat's thoughts on Thor Ragnarok, check out our Damn You Hollywood review. So to half of those people, like anybody that I talk to at work who's really interested in, going to see the Avengers, I would not recommend the comic book because I really feel like they're two separate entities. The movies are definitely made for a wider audience. Comic books, especially in 1991, were made for comic book fans. I don't know about now. I'm not sure who they're writing for now. They might be. I'm pretty sure they're writing for the Huffington Post.
Very well could be.
That's when I was going to get a reaction for that. On the other hand, to somebody who's reading comic books but hasn't quite come across this yet, sure, I would recommend it to him. It's good stuff.
All right, Pat, what's your final thoughts? What are you thinking?
And nothing else matters.
Some Metallica.
This just, I read Armageddon 2001, and hindsight, despite the Swerve Bro ending to that, I still think I made the right choice. Infinity Gauntlet was a much hyped, much talked about, much ado about nothing event for me. It led to a series that really didn't go anywhere. It led to the whole nigh important Infinity Gems being sent to a B-level company that Marvel purchased and killed off quickly.
Oh man.
It just there was nothing that came of this. There's nothing in it really to me that you really have to read or see. Even if you're going to see the movie, I don't think this will give you any insight as to what it's really about. I just hard pass.
Okay. And it led to a podcast that made you hate Thanos.
Yeah, that's where we got to.
The results are in. We hate them. All right. Well, then let's go ahead. We'll talk about our expectations of the upcoming movie, because this episode is going to be dropping the night. It's Thursday night that the movie is going to be released, in Infinity War. So, Mark, what are your expectations? Do you think anything from the book, do you want to see anything from the book show up in the movie? What's your thoughts? What do you expect? What do you want to happen with the movie?
I read an article today that said the Russo brothers have said that the Infinity War movie will be funnier than the last two Captain America movies.
What?
At this point,
dude, if you,
I am now expecting another Thor Ragnarok.
That cannot be a legitimate quote.
I swear to God, I can find it for you if you want. I think I'll enjoy the movie for its entertainment value. I'm not expecting it to, after people know my thoughts on Civil War, where I was enjoying it up until the stupid ending. And Andrew Graham has sent me numerous direct messages telling me how wrong I am about how I feel about Robert Downey Jr.'s performance at the end of that movie and how all that went down. I have a sneaking suspicion I'm going to walk out of Infinity War kind of feeling the same way. Where like, well, I was entertained for a while, but then this went off the fucking rails on me.
Oh, man, that's scary. This is the culmination of a lot of, a lot of initiative, I guess I would say.
All right, hang on. Here's the article. Infinity War. This is a headline from CBR.com. Infinity War will be funnier than the Captain America movies. Directors Joe and Anthony Russo won over fans with Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Civil War, which are notably more somber than most of the other Marvel Cinematic Universe releases.
They won people over with Civil War?
But Joe Russo assures that the Avengers Infinity War will be funnier than the duo's previous two Marvel Studio efforts.
Why do we have to have an article that comes out to say that? that does not need to be said.
Why did it lie and say that people took to them for Civil War?
I just don't.
There were people who liked Civil War?
Yes. Yes, sir, there were. Highly rated movie.
I don't know. I understand the character interactions is probably where the humor is going to be coming from. This is a very, if it reflects anything that happens in this story where people are getting killed left and right, it's
and Thanos is quipping like fucking Freddy Krueger.
Oh, dude.
No, don't worry about that because the film was inspired by 1990s heist films. So if anything, he'll be making smart alecky comments like John Travolta.
Oh, terrific.
Those great 90s heist films.
I swear to goodness, if I come out of this movie hating it because of bullshit like that, I will be very upset.
I hope Thanos and Iron Man do a face-off. Like, a John Travolta, Nick Cage face-off.
You don't want
nice.
You don't want like your Thanos to be like Charlie Sheen in The Ride?
No, I want him to be like Charlie Sheen in oh god, what's the stupid comedy that he's in?
Major League?
No, the TV show. Men.
2.5 Men.
2.5 Men. Yeah, that's how I want Thanos to be. I want him to, he's less worried about creating, snapping his fingers and killing everybody as he is with banging Proxima Midnight.
Oh, gosh.
Or am I thinking of the Axel Braun Triple X version of this? That's bound to come out.
All right, Pat. Give us.
Hey, Jesse, are you keeping track of how many times I bring up pornography on your comic book podcast?
Not yet. Pat, give us the lowdown. What are your expectations of the movie? Are you going to go see it for opening night?
No, I don't do that anymore. There's too many yahoos out there.
Damn yahoos! All right, yeah. What do you think?
Listen, my expectations are pretty low. I'm not going to lie to you. Thor Ragnarok really, really soured me on the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, where legitimately the only movies I look forward to now are the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise movies, strictly dealing with them, and that's more to do with the overall chemistry of the cast more than anything else. I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe has taken a progressively negative turn from about 2015 onward. And with all of these elements coming into play now, and with the direction that they want to shift things in, I'm not optimistic. First of all, the storyline that they're basing it on is a pile of heaping trash, and the main villain is the culprit of trash pandas. I just really can't express how much this show made me realize Thanos sucks. It's really just awful. He starts off as a ripoff of Netron, and then they're like, well, if you're gonna rip off a new guy, rip off Darkseid. So he's essentially a double ripoff to start with. Then on top of that, he's just love me, praise me, attention for me, please, Miss Death, I love you, Miss Death, please look at me. And just progressively worse. And then there's clones, which always ruin everything. And Yeah, Thanos is terrible.
Man, oh man. Well, I guess I will be the optimistic one here on this podcast. I will tell you.
Hang on a second. I didn't say I.
No, you brought up some BS article that really makes me worry about what I'm going to get my ass into when I go and watch this show.
Oh, now you're worried?
Well, you know what?
The past
Pat,
4 years?
When I think you got in, when you chimed in on Thor Ragnarok, I almost was like, man, what the hell is this guy talking about? And then I realized what they did with your sacred cow and Asgardia, what they did to Asgard and how they treated it. I understand where you're coming from, sir. I understand that completely. So if they do anything like that to treat the destruction of these heroes that we have been, watching grow in front of our eyes, and then they're if I get a quip of any kind, I will throw something.
Stop quipping.
Don't do it, Thanos. Stop it. No. I know you're trash. Pat Mullen taught me so. But listen, stop it.
No, you guys taught me.
I did not mean to ruin Thanos for Pat. That was not the intention.
I think he's mostly saying I ruined it.
Yes. You are the ruinator, Mark Radulich.
There's no doubt about it.
I remember the excitement that I had going in and watching the first Avengers film and watching all these guys come together, and how proud I was to be a comic book fan at that point in time, how I stuck through. I was one of the guys that continued to collect these issues when it was looked down upon. And now there are legions of people who are reading stuff that I read back in the 90s because they got to try and catch up. And all thanks to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So what I want to see is another film that makes me feel like that again. And I'm hoping that this is...
So you're not a person who studies movies a lot.
Okay.
And
true.
And you need to be listening to more Damn You Hollywood so we can school you.
And on top of that, you can always watch a movie like Next Avengers, Heroes of Tomorrow, and be infinitely more satisfied.
The animated film?
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been rather depressing.
The goal was to, I guess, get people hyped up for the movie, and we just took that sumbitch and swerve, bro.
Once again, the Source Material Podcast. We take your sacred cows and shit down its throat.
Wow. Well, this has been the Source Material Podcast covering Infinity Gauntlet 1 through 6. We had a great discussion tonight. I appreciate both of you guys coming on here and talking this book with me. We'll go ahead. We'll get into plugs here. Mark Radulich, what's upcoming on the schedule, sir?
All right. You got to open this podcast when you edit it. You got to open this podcast with Snap, I Got the Power.
Snap? Oh, that's a good one. I'm putting it in the notes right now.
But you got to end it with something funny, especially after everything we've said about this.
Something absurdly depressing.
I don't know. I was thinking something like hey, a movie from the Muppets. Hey, a movie. Yeah, it's gonna be terrific, starring everybody and me.
Hey, a movie.
I was just trying to find like an MP3 of Vince Russo just saying "Swerve, bro."
Nice. Did Vince Russo have intro music in WCW?
I don't know. I do not know.
All right, someone needs to find that, and that's what you end the podcast with. just Russo-isms. Speaking of Russos, what are we doing on the Radulich Broadcasting Network? Well, this podcast will be debuting on the Radulich Broadcasting Network on the day that the Infinity War movie comes out, which will be a Thursday.
Whoops, I got disconnected there for a second.
Welcome back. You didn't answer our question because you got disconnected. Does Vince Russo have intro music?
Yes, it was a bad Iron Man ripoff.
Terrific.
Right. There we go. Perfect. It is too, actually.
So if you're listening to this on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, here's what came out this week. We started the week off with the DC's Legends of Tomorrow TV party tonight on Monday. And then we followed that up with Lost in Space TV party tonight, the show from Netflix.
God,
I don't know.
To Mark.
I don't know what happened on Wednesday. I wasn't there. I was at the Foo Fighter show. Next week, you'll hear our Thanos Rising show. We'll have our Damn You Hollywood review of Avengers Infinity War, in which case, if it's if it's the level of Thor Ragnarok with all this, chaos level destruction and people are quipping, I'm going to be drunk during that podcast.
Yeah, you also said you're doing Thanos Rising. That's appropriate because you really can't get any lower than where we put him on the show tonight.
Thanos Rising from the ash heap.
Jason Aaron did a good job with that book. I will definitely say that.
And then the Metal Hammer of Doom, speaking of gods, we'll be looking at the new Godsmack album, where Legends Rise.
All right. Thanos rises, Legends rise. You done, Mark?
Yeah, oh boy, am I done.
Well,
allow me to think all that then.
Pat Mullen, please, sir, what do you got going on? And what would you like to plug, sir?
Allegedly, there will be a Casual Heroes reunion happening at some point.
It didn't happen tonight.
It didn't happen tonight. It was on the books, but we couldn't find a box to put Gavin in to have to get out of. Because anybody that comes out of boxes, they're going to be over right away. Goddamn. Huh. Extra cheese. He's a heel. He's a heel. God damn, extra cheese, extra onions, motherfucker.
Was that our WrestleMania review when Pat just went off?
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't remember what show it was.
Yeah, go ahead and listen for some wacky hijinks on that WrestleMania review on the Rattleitch Broadcasting Network. You can hear several guest appearances, including both Vince Russo and Jim Cornette, who showed up for it. The Road Dogg and Jeff Jarrett showed up for that. We had a great time with all of them.
Fucking Jesse Ventura made an appearance.
Well, he's a U.S. governor. He has the right. Who are you to tell him that he can't show up somewhere?
What's next?
Watch for me on True TV, folks. I'll be one of the guys who they arrest and you don't know why, and I try to plead my case. You can catch me in small claims court on the People's Court for defacing someone's property. I swear I didn't graffiti Thanos sucks on a movie theater. That was not me.
Second-rate dark side.
That's a frame job if I've ever seen one. Also, death to all dirty, stinking muties. Re-elect Senator Robert Kelly.
When do I cut you off? Is that now?
Just let him keep going.
Come on, Pat. Is that it?
Yeah, that's all I got for tonight. I'm gonna let you take over.
Thank you so much for being on this podcast. Mark Rattleitch, thank you very much for being on this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a slice of heaven. And I cannot wait until next week when I get to watch Infinity War as it drops here in the theaters. Maybe next week. Hell, the way all these tickets are selling out. I don't know if I'll be able to make it there before the weekend or not. But either way, I suggest that you do. If you're listening to this podcast right now, get your tickets if you can. Most likely you may not be able to, but if you're one of those lucky ones, enjoy the movie. Thank you for joining us here for our coverage on Infinity Gauntlet. That's Mark Rattleitch. That's Pat Mullen. I'm Jesse Starcher. Have a good one.